Hello?
That's a big bag, it might hurt.
Got it, thank you.
Saw my email, right? Earlier.
Welcome all to the Village of Rybrook Planning Board meeting. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome. My name is Rob Goodman. I'm a chair of the Planning Board. Board members also attending tonight are John Gerzan, Scott Mendelson, Amy Schoen, and Lenny Vaisman. Ed Teig is excused for tonight. Also in attendance is a liaison from the Board of Trustees, David Heiser, our village attorney, Robert Zitt, our superintendent of public works, Michael Nowak, and our village planning consultant from Hardesty and Hanover, Chris Oliveira. I also, in spirit, want to introduce our Tara Orlando, who's our board secretary, who does all the work behind the scenes so that we can sound intelligent here. She does all of our minutes and everything else that's logistics. So thank you, Tara, even though you're not here in body. Our first item, we're going to take, if the board doesn't mind, we'll take the second item of the agenda first. So, okay, 47 Hawthorne Avenue, you are up. Yeah, will they come up? We'll open up a public hearing. Can I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing?
Moved.
Second.
Be here all night, guys. Mr. Grzan.
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson.
Yes.
Ms. Schoen.
Yes.
Mr. Weissman.
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. Okay. All right.
All right. Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams.
Microphone.
registered-
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Turn that up. That looks weird. There we go.
Wasn't
You
sure
need
if
to
I
be
was
picked
talking-
up on streaming video, you know. This is your time in the sun.
My 15 minutes of fame. Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect, owner of A2 Land Consulting out of New Fairfield, Connecticut. Here tonight representing Mr. Verone, who is in the audience, if there's additional questions. I know we gave you a very thorough presentation last time we were here, sent to a public hearing. I don't know if you would like me to redo the entire presentation because I'm not sure if there's anyone here from the public.
No, we'll
Great.
find out. Is there anyone in the public who wants to speak to this application?
There's your answer.
There's
Maybe
our
right.
answer.
Maybe right.
Okay.
I
I mean, I'm happy to, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think we understand what the issue is with the
Great.
grading and all that, and I think you presented a plan, which I believe there was a consensus that it made sense.
Fantastic.
Chris, are there any outstanding planning issues relating to the application?
No, we don't have any additional comments other than the
Right.
ones submitted in the memo.
Okay, that's good.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, what we'll do is we'll move the application forward. I think we have a resolution. Unless any board member wants to speak to the application, we can have Robert, read the resolution
Fantastic.
and have you move forward.
You did such a great job, huh?
Thank you.
Are you getting paid by the minute or the second that he said before?
Well, that's why I said it. Good.
He's good, all right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Rob.
All right. This resolution is on the village website. It's a resolution granting amended site plan and steep slope work permit approval for property located at 47 Hawthorne Avenue. Whereas property owner Gregory Verone has submitted applications for approval of an amended site plan and steep slope work permit for a new single-family dwelling with an attached garage located at 47 Hawthorne Avenue in an R15 zoning district and in the Scenic Roads Overlay Zoning District. The planning board is the approval authority for both the site plan and the steep slope work permit under the conditions. Whereas on June 8th, 2023, the planning board approved an amended site plan and steep slope work permit for same, which the applicant desires to amend.
Robert, you can skip the whereas.
Yeah.
Yeah, you stick
All
to
right.
the conditions
All right.
if there are any.
All right, guys. All right. Now therefore be it resolved that for the reasons stated herein, the Village of Rybrook Planning Board hereby approves the amended site plans and steep slope work permit. One of the conditions, well, there are several conditions, one of which is to just comply with the previous site plan amendment approval resolution dated June 8th of 2023 and the prior resolutions referenced
I'm
therein.
sorry, but I can't hear you at all.
Oh,
Is that
your
microphone
work?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll lean in more. Is this better?
Better.
This is better.
Yeah, that's
Gotta get closer. All right, so that's it.
okay.
All right. Unless there are any comments, can I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution of approval?
Moved.
Second,
All right. Call the roll. Oh, close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Have a motion and a second to close the public hearing?
Moved.
second,
Mr. Grzan,
yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Weissman,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now you can call the roll for the resolution.
So motion and second for resolution.
So moved.
So second,
Mr. Grzan,
yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Weissman,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you and great job.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Take care.
Good luck.
Continued good luck.
Thank you.
Looks great. Looks very good.
Appreciate it. Getting there.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
It would look nicer if the village take care of those roots on the street.
I'm trying.
Okay, Kingsfield Development. Come on up.
Those were shots fired. Mike, jeez. Those were shots fired.
Good evening, honorable members of the planning board. My name is David Gelfarb. I am an attorney with the law firm of Moss and Kalish in New York City. I am here tonight on behalf of the Kingfield Lot Homeowners Association, Inc. With me tonight are Mr. Peter Alter, the treasurer of Kingfield, and Ms. McMahon, Lauren McMahon, our engineer. We have obviously spent a good deal of time on this matter, so I would like to make a few points tonight, sort of pursuant to our discussion last time, as well as a lengthy discussion that I had with Ms. Gray this morning. We intend to provide an annual update to the village if this matter is approved. By an annual update, she expressed a concern that the village would need to be kept updated on how much impervious surface had been approved by the board and how much had been approved through Mr. Fuse and through the village's processes. In other words, obviously there is a considerable amount of impervious space still available, and we understand that the village needs to be kept informed on an ongoing basis as to how much of it is being used. She suggested something in the nature of at least an annual report, which is being done apparently by at least one other association within the village, and we don't really have any problem with that. We intend to have a process of our own for keeping track of additional impervious surface that we approve of. The board intends to form either a committee or to act as its own committee in considering, evaluating, and reviewing applications for additional impervious surface. Obviously, the additional impervious surface would presumably be patios. We understand and are very cognizant of the significance of not going beyond the limits of impervious surface that we are seeking through our application. We are very conscious that all through the process of approving Kingfield, there was recognition of how much impervious surface was left. We know that it went down and down. There were two resolutions in which the amount was dropped considerably. Nonetheless, there is still 4,835 square feet left. As you may be aware, originally there was citations to Dolph Rotfeld's reports where he said that there were about 11,000 square feet. And in the two resolutions that I've previously discussed with you, that amount dropped down. We understand the importance of establishing a system for granting expansions that is fair and equitable. We understand that it's a little challenging to have fair and equitable defined, but you certainly have our commitment to creating as fair and equitable a system as possible. The idea is not to have a free-for-all. I went over that with Jennifer Gray today, and we certainly understand the need for that. We will establish standards for allowing expansions. That would include perhaps a possible cap on square footage, considerations, limitations on materials to be used, and the impact on the community of expanding individual patios. That would include aesthetics. We intend to consider compatibility, proportion, contextual relationships, scale, colors, and materials. Certain materials may well look better, certain colors may well look better, and that will be addressed in the board or its committee's considerations. We will consider an amendment to the declaration. Obviously, I cannot commit to whether the amended declaration would ever be amended. I certainly don't know that it's within your purview to necessarily address it. I understand from speaking to her that she mentioned that one of you had a concern about it. I'm not even certain whether 9.2 or 9.5.1.1 would require a change. We understand and will, of course, consider the Kingfield's board's rights and powers under 9.4 of the declaration. Again, we will not countenance any kind of a free-for-all. The applications, I think, will be considered on at least a monthly basis. It's not going, the board is only 3 volunteers, and so obviously they're not going to address them, every single day. So certainly a large number may come in at the beginning, and they will all be addressed, not, one gets favored because it got there 5 minutes before another. I think that we will consider how an individual patio came to be enlarged. For example, did it happen because someone asked the board for permission, which may or may not have been improvidently granted? Was it done by the builder? That certainly is, we know that happened, or prior to an owner taking possession. All 3 of those are something to be considered. Ms. Gray also said there was a concern about sheds, because they can add impervious surface and they do not necessarily require a building permit. I can tell you that the board has previously expressed to me that they have no intention of allowing sheds, and no one has in fact ever asked for a shed.
What about decks?
Well, luckily we have Mr. Alter here who can tell me if anyone has requested decks. I am not aware of anyone who expanded a deck. I can't say it's never happened, but he can address it, and if he doesn't know, which he may well not, that's something that can be addressed in a resolution. Finally, I intend to, also she mentioned notice. As you know, there are, of course, statutory requirements as to notice. We have gone beyond those. We have had Zoom meetings with the community. We have sent letters out to the community. For better or worse, a lot of members of the community got, shall we say, smacked in the nose because they woke up and found notices on their doors. So they certainly are very, very aware that this has been going on. We have, of course, kept up. We've gone beyond the 10-day limitation, or the 1 week, rather, for putting up signs. We've already put signs up 3 times. So there have been signs up for weeks and weeks and weeks about public hearings. Regrettably, we're not getting much of a turnout, but nonetheless, we have fully complied with the Rybrook Code. Lastly, I intend to make a written submission covering these points and anything else that comes up tonight. I understand that may help at the next meeting in helping to formulate and to draft a resolution. But those are the points that I wanted to make tonight. I didn't really want to right off the bat repeat everything I've said already, because you've heard it all already.
I appreciate that, and I think there's been a lot of discussion about this. And of course, everyone is concerned about making the right decision here.
Right, right.
And we conferred with council. Yeah, you conferred with council, and as I understand it, and Robert, you can chime in, but the genesis of this issue was, I thought, a bit enlightening in how it came to be that the declaration had this prohibition in it. And as I understand it, it actually came at the behest of the developer, that the DOT, as part of its processes, requested that the developer come up with some sort of a process of dealing with amendments and additions over time as required by the members of the community, as required by the community. and that the developer took the position that that was unnecessary because no one would be allowed to undertake additions or modifications of their lots. So it was sort of left at that time, and now fast forward, the process that I think the BOT intended to discuss with the developer and come to some sort of understanding about it is now being taken up by us. And as I understand it, the planning board, we do have the jurisdiction to help the community come to a resolution on this. And I think everything you said is well received. Obviously, I think the big challenge is to come up with a plan that is best formulated by the community itself. I mean, you mentioned certain variables that we would not have necessarily knowledge about in terms of the specific situations of each of these homeowners, but they would be taken into consideration if a plan were developed. And I think in speaking to, my colleagues, individually on this, I think everyone is looking forward to seeing that submission, and then working out, what other conditions, may be required to make that work. And I'm holding the conditions sort of in abeyance until we see the plan, because that may, give us ideas of additional things that probably should be in a resolution. I think you mentioned the issue of tracking impervious surface and providing, annual reports to the village concerning, these efforts. I agree with that. I think that was recommended by council. I think that's also consistent with what I think other communities, I think the Arbors is doing with respect to the same type of issue. And so, it looks like we have a partnership on this, and we'll see what you provide, and we'll really endeavor to give it a review, a worthy review, and if we have any comments or suggestions, we'll advance those. As I also understand it, the building department has held in abeyance any enforcement actions, pending a resolution of our efforts here. So it can't go on for too long, but I think that, is it feasible to come back next month with something in writing for us concerning a plan?
Well, I think that would be feasible. I mean, I was thinking of perhaps even exchanging correspondence with Ms. Gray, because obviously she, has a say in all of this, and certainly has a pipeline to all of you, that rather than me, just writing something, sending it in, and sort of having an iterative process that can go on for months, it would be better to sort of send her something, see what she thinks. Of course, it wouldn't be up to me. She might consult with you or whatever, but then sort of like iron out, sort of to have, shall we say, an informal process.
First of all, she's extremely familiar, as is Robert, with the sort of the history of this. They went through, I believe, every resolution that they could lay their hands on to understand sort of how everything eventuated. And Jen in particular has a lot of familiarity with the developments relating to the Arbors, which is sort of our paradigm for this, because apparently they do have a plan of how they are supposed to, deal with proposed modifications. And so I think that, in working with Jen and working with Robert, I think you'll have, very good partners in at least, evaluating whether or not, what you're doing or the paths you're going down, make sense or don't make sense. So
Yeah, I mean, I would, like to, if at all possible, kind of have that worked out with Jen and Robert, in advance of the next meeting, because obviously, you have violations outstanding on people's houses.
Yeah.
It's not good. I mean, it's
yeah,
not a good thing.
well, I mean, I think unfortunately, and this is why you're in the better position than we are of micromanaging this. But I mean, there are all different ways of approaching it. But someone's going to feel pain. Someone is going to be very unhappy about what the determination is, inevitably. But I think that the HOA is obviously in the best position to sort of make that evaluation and come up with a fair approach. Is anyone, please, colleagues, chime in.
Mr. Chairman,
You know,
unfortunately, I missed the,
Microphone.
I missed the discussion that you had with our legal staff.
Yeah.
I went through the resolutions myself. I know where the 11,000 square feet came from. It kind of is tied to the stormwater management plan that was submitted with the original site plan approval. And our consultant came back that stormwater management can actually handle additional 11,000, and that it would not trigger stormwater management review or update. I also was able to find through, as you said, Mr. Goldfarb, there were a number of site plan amendments since the original, and every time they went back and took piece of a pie, took a couple of thousand square feet of those impervious surface. In every case, it was always for the common use. The original resolution has a specific provision, and this is my question. In the original resolution that was approved by the board in 2016, approving the site plan, that this 11,000 square feet cannot be used for private driveways, patios, walkways, and so on. So I guess my question is really one of a legal nature. Can we change that, and for what good reason? Just because somebody ignored the law and went and did a violation, and we now want to accommodate those that, it kind of reminds me, as you know, you speed and you get a ticket.
Right.
Rather than paying the ticket, you go to the village and you ask them to increase the speed limit on a given street. So that, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all saw that problem, and I think everyone here has shared a viewpoint that we want to allow people to do what they want to their homes within reason. I think the concern was the moral hazard that you're raising, right? Are we saying okay to the people that have done it and to the detriment of their neighbors, right? Because there's only a piece of the pie. I would be interested in knowing from the board or Mr. Gelfarb, have there been other applications? Because I think something that came up in
But
the,
that's not even moral issue. With me, it's the legal issue.
Well,
Can we change, we as a board?
It is a legal issue.
Can we change that provision that was in the original resolution and allow that square footage to be used for private use rather than the common good?
Yeah, the board has the discretion
We have
to,
that
yes,
discretion. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
so I guess, one of the things I think was raised on the call was, this isn't just about patios. If we approve the swap, it allows for any impervious surface and
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you can limit it. You can
within-
limit it to whatever you want.
within,
actually.
but your application is to allow for the impervious surface amendment. So it's not just limited to patios. So my question would be, to the neighbor that eventually wants to expand their deck, right? Have there been applications in, like, what sort of mechanism is there going to be in place? And I'd like to see that in the plan, is, maybe everyone doesn't, I know the notice provisions, I understand it, and I appreciate that, but have there been applications to expand decks, or build new decks, or build sheds, or expand driveways? I don't know. I'd like to hear if that has been,
Well,
thought about or
sure,
applications
I'll
made.
call up in a moment, Mr. Alter. He can address that to the best of his
Can you
ability.
please
But
speak into the microphone? It's
Sure,
hard to hear you with the air conditioner on.
sure, I'll
Thank you.
call up Mr. Alter in a moment, and he can address that to the best of his ability. But I can represent to the board that nothing has ever happened with sheds. I mean, nothing. So, but you have the authority to limit this application to, whatever types of, shall we say, construction you want.
But if we limited it to patios, we're doing exactly what Mr. Grzan
Right.
just said, right? We're basically making it only for patios, and that's only because of those that already built the patio. So I don't think that would be fair.
I would be
equitable.
almost looking more if there is a walkway. It's a safety issue. Let's say somebody has a driveway and there is not a walkway from the driveway to the main entrance. Or it's too narrow that in the wintertime when there is ice and the snow, you could slip and so on. So I could just almost justify that. But expanding the patio, it's kind of convenience. I have a more difficult time justifying expansion of the patios than I have of the walkways. Or let's say somebody wants to put a small block because they want to have a barbecue outside. Because of safety reason, you want a barbecue to flip on the grass, so you want a stable foundation. I could see that. But if somebody just wants to, they have a 300 square foot patio and they want to make it to a 600 square foot patio, I have a problem with that. And then that's the case where I would almost impose that they have to remove the violation. Because then it would be more equitable. You can take that 300 square foot that somebody made a large patio and give it to somebody that needs
For
barbecue
safety.
or needs a walkway,
Certainly, the
something like
board, one of its issues will be in evaluating, because each and every person who has done this is going to have to submit some kind of an application to, shall we say, retroactively legalize it. The board will have to establish a mechanism for determining what size patio. It's like we said, we're not going to have a free-for-all that whoever, grabbed the most turf is necessarily going to keep it. That will be a board decision, and, with input from the community.
But, Mr. Galbraith, but the Board of Trustees made that decision. They made that
No, I'm
decision
talking
when
about
they
the Board
approved.
Well, that's why the
Yeah.
history is actually interesting,
Yeah.
because one of the things one of the issues that Lenny raised a meeting or so ago was, why was that prohibition in there, and did that prohibition implicate technical or engineering, aspects that we should take cognizance of before we allowed the swap, which I think was a fair point. Now, the history, as Robert and Jen sort of uncovered, was actually more pedestrian than that. There was no technical or engineering reason why that prohibition was in there. It sort of eventuated out of a relationship between the BOT and the developer. The BOT, consistent with its practice in dealing with PUDs, wanted a process from the developer, advanced by the developer, to explain how they were going to deal with modifications, additions, and changes to the private residences over time, because things change over time and people may need certain things. And how was the HOA going to deal with that? And the developer, I'm maybe a bit cynical about this, but they didn't want it. They wanted to get the approval. They weren't interested in engaging with the DOT, maybe an extended discussion about how to deal with these modifications and additions over time. So it made the representation that there would not be, there was no problem, because no modifications would be allowed. You didn't need a plan if no modifications were allowed. And so the BOT took that as, well, okay, the developer is saying there are not going to be any modifications, so we're going to put it in the declaration, which is what happened. So now, I obviously that was a mistake, because had the
On
developer,
whose part?
on the part of the developer,
Right.
and not
Okay.
working with
Not the village part.
not working with the BOT to come up with a plan, which we are talking about now. Now you fast forward, 10 years, and obviously there was a need to deal with this issue. To just say no modifications was an easy way of getting around the discussion, but now we're confronted with a practical problem that people have either, engaged in self-help to change their private property, or there may be a need in the future for there to be private modifications. So now we're stepping in and we're saying, well, okay, what wasn't done then? Let's do it now.
Right.
Let's do it now and address, and I think that makes sense to me. Now it makes more sense to me.
Right, and in fact, you heard from homeowners who said that the builder itself did a lot of this, that the builder did a lot of this. The builder would sort of acted, shall we say, with a bit of a forked tongue, or a forked forklift, no pun intended. But
But
it
that's-
did this.
That may be true, except
Right.
that it's there.
Right,
And
it's-
therefore, they should have known that it was there. Not the developer, the buyers.
Well, the buyers, as I understand it, the buyers were privy to all of these declarations and documentation, and had their lawyers gone through it, they would have seen exactly what you've seen and what we've seen.
I don't blame, I don't
We've discussed
blame.
the whole, we've discussed since
Yeah.
about real estate
The
lawyers and what
individual
they
I
do.
think we're doing the same thing now, what the builder was doing at the time.
Right.
As long as we are just focusing on 4,800 square feet,
Yeah.
it's such a small
that's-
space. If you want to really look as a whole, and you do want to help the residents, well, maybe you want to consider it, what happens if we wind up with a 20,000 square feet of additional impervious surface? You may have to go and look at the stormwater management plan, you may have to expand that, you definitely would have to do a study, and that may be a more equitable solution than if anybody else wants to come in, you having more square footage and you can deal with it.
Well, that may be down the road what they need to do.
How many, I'm still interested to hear, like, what are the applications? Is it just for patios, or do people,
Why don't I bring up Mr.
do
Alter,
people
That would
want
be
to?
helpful.
who's our treasurer, and he can address that question and any others that you might have.
Happy to answer any questions. Excuse me. There are no,
Address for the record.
Name?
Peter Alter. I am the treasurer for the Kingfield HOA. So the process that's in place, and I can't speak to the documentation of the process in terms of legality or how it foots to the declarations. That's our attorney's position or job. But the process that's in place, and again, speaking as a layperson, is that a homeowner, if they were going to make any alteration to their home, so that could be a deck addition, which we've never had that request, and that request could never be approved for many reasons, physically, practically, neighbors and so forth. We've never had a request like that. But we'll get a request for somebody may want a tree in their yard, that kind of thing. So those requests, we have an architectural review, all volunteer. We have a volunteer architectural review board. They review applications, and then they submit with a presentation and a recommendation to the board, and then the board votes yea or nay. The patio,
At what point in time is the village require, do you have to come back to the village and get the approval?
the approval from the HOA is simply that the HOA will not prevent or has no problem with what the plan is, but then the individual homeowner is instructed and
Come
is
to the village.
responsible for
Okay.
dealing, right.
So you do not give the final approval, you just give the concurrence?
Only from the, we have no authority, only from the HOA
Okay.
perspective.
All right, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
and the patio topic that we're on right now basically was presented to us, the HOA board, as we have a number of homeowners with a problem on their hands. And if they lived in a private home not within an HOA and not subject to this site plan, they'd be on their own, they'd go to the village hall, and they would try to get whatever documentation and permits they need. They're on their own. And what we as an HOA board have been asked to do is remove the first hurdle, which is the site plan and the HOA limitation on any sort of a modification. Come up with a way to address that, resolve that, fix that, so that then that frees up all individual homeowners to go get properly permitted from the village as if they owned a private home outside of an HOA. So that's really our objective and our charge from the homeowners is a bunch of people woke up with these pink stop work notices. They obviously called the HOA board. We have to figure out what's going on. Now we think we know, and obviously you all know better than I do, but we've got this challenge of the site plan, and we've been asked, is there a way that we can come up with a resolution, a fix to this, so that then all the individual homeowners can go to the board as if they were owning a home that was their own private property?
So how come did we wind up with so many violations?
Well, again, I can only speak from my personal perspective and experience as a board member. I think that for sure there's got to be patios in the neighborhood that never even went through HOA approval. And I know this has been discussed in meetings past, so I don't want to rehash that unless you have an interest to. But I think that the people that have patios now that are outside the site plan drawings, they got that way a couple different ways. Either the builder did it for them upon request to make the sale go through, a previous owner did it, the home was sold without knowledge of the patio. Some cases, they never even went to the HOA, but the HOA, for the majority of them, I would expect, has seen, reviewed, and approved from the HOA's perspective a patio. And the homes are all different. I think there's 5 styles, and, some are on the outside, some are on the perimeter, some are on the inside. So some of the homes are better suited to a patio expansion than others. So we have a situation now where I think the community is maybe 6 years old or so. There was a flurry of activity in the early days, and I'm actually, I think, was the first resale. I'm not an original buyer. I haven't been there from the beginning, but I know there was a flurry of activity early. We have not seen a request for a patio extension in probably a year, and nothing pending.
So, Mr. Alter, I agree with everything what you said. But if we do what we are being asked to do, in my own mind, and this is where I have a problem, I do want to help the residents. They deserve all the help. As a matter of fact, I'm here to help them.
Appreciate
They're
that.
part of the village. But I also have a problem where we will be rewarding those
Right.
that did not follow the rule and penalize those that are willing to follow the rule. And why am I saying penalize? Because you have so little area left, 4,800 square feet. It's irrelevant almost. The number is so small, so minuscule, that we are wasting a lot of time. If we really want to do the right thing, I think we need to either look at that number and make it a little bigger number, in which case, unfortunately, you have to go back to the stormwater management plan and see what impact would that have, or do you have to install additional facilities to deal with the stormwater? I just personally have difficulty rewarding those that don't follow the rule.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's the way I am.
And I take your point. And a thought that I have as a potential response is that right now we know what we know, which is there are certain patios that are outside the lines. We know that there is still some additional space available if the site plan can be amended to allow that one impervious surface to be broken up across many individual homes. We don't know if we're going to get any other applications for new patios. Back to my point earlier of probably all of the homes that are most suited to or would most really call out for an expanded patio have already done it. The homes on the inside that are small and touch and contiguous and back up on each other really don't have a good yard for an extension, but we know that there's been no demand in a long time.
Do
So
you have
what
a-
if?
Do you have, I'm sorry, finish it. I'm sorry.
Okay, my thought is, to conclude the thought, what if we were able to make available the additional space that could be available now? And then if we were to get close to approach that number, at that point, we would invest in the stormwater research and understand how much more, and then request it then, because we don't know at this point if we're ever going to need it. And obviously, we're a new community. We don't have a big budget to spend on things that we may not necessarily need.
There seems to be, and I think we discussed that, but there's a certain inequity in that those, look, I think that there is a way to develop a plan, and it probably should have been done at the beginning. If this was the ultimate thing, there's this excess impervious surface, and it seems that they took the easy way out and just said, hey, it's for community use, which sounds great, but it sounds like that the board the HOA has decided not to pursue that avenue. But what I'm concerned about is the plan for the guy in 10 years or the woman in 10 years, homeowner, who is left with no impervious surface actually has a request to do something that would benefit their style of home, whether that's an increased deck or patio or walkway, and is left with being the person coming to the board saying, now you've got to spend all of this money for an engineering program and come before the board. And what if we say no to that person? Right? How is the board going to deal with that situation? That's what I would like to see in this plan, and especially because we know that if all of the people and all the homes with the impervious, that have used the impervious surface are legalized, right, and they eat from that pot, the only thing, I think there's only about 1,500 square feet left for the remaining 70 homes. So, that's not a lot. And to John's point, I mean, that leaves us in a situation that we're going to have to be dealing with this in perpetuity, and so is the village. So I think that is really the crux of my issue with this, and it sounds
Definitely.
parallel
share
with
that.
Right.
parallel with this is, look, our job is we're the planning board, and we keep using the word plan, and that's what we're supposed to do here. And there wasn't a plan in the beginning, and the plan was to not do this, and now we're faced with this. We need a concrete plan to understand how and you're right, it should be the HOA's discretion, and I kind of have come around to that. It is the HOA's discretion of how to equitably distribute it. But we are, as a board and the village, are going to have to deal with the fallout from when there's nothing left, and that is where I think our purview is here.
Well, it actually may start with the HOA. No one's getting to the board without the HOA approval, and what'll happen is, if you spin out the scenario, is that if a person wants, has a plan for let's say a patio of 100 square feet, but because there's either no impervious surface left to allocate or less than 100, then they're going to come to the HOA, oh, I have this patio I want to build for 100, and the HOA says, I'm sorry, we can't do that because we would be in violation of the impervious surface requirements.
Right.
And it would stop right there. And at that point in time, you'd probably have sort of an unhappy homeowner, or how you manage that was, either people put it behind them or they get very sticky with you, but it really wouldn't become a village problem. It would be at the HOA level until such a time as the HOA is able to address the issue, and if the homeowners ends up being approved by the HOA, it would come before the whatever organ is responsible for overseeing that, probably the planning board, and then we would apply the bulk requirement, whatever requirements are.
Mr.
are
Chairman, do you envision individual homeowner to come before us and we tell them, you gotta revise the stormwater management plan and you have to expand the stormwater management facility?
Well, I'm saying it won't.
That would not,
I mean,
that would not.
I have a concern with this idea that, well, what are we going to be doing in 10 years? I mean, we have to sort of focus on the here and now. We have an application, we have, something, a concrete application to do something. To say, well, in 10 years you're going to have unhappy homeowners, that may well be, but on the other hand, who knows what'll be in
Mr.
10 years?
Gelfer,
We
It's
have
been
a
exa-
responsibility to do that as well.
But that's exactly
We're a
why we're
planning
here.
board.
Exactly 10
We have a
years that we're dealing with
responsibility
it.
to do that.
That's exactly why we're here now.
Well,
That's right.
Right, but
Exactly the thing is
if someone
today.
is unhappy in 10 years, they can go to their board of their development and say, we think, or me and my spouse and I, or my partner and I think that the HOA should go out and seek to amend the site plan.
They didn't do that to begin with.
Hold on, hold on, and at that time, recognizing that if almost all of the square footage is used up, that's gonna be a big expense, that they're gonna have to go before, there's gonna be a lot of work, there's gonna be a lot of issues for the engineer to deal with, and, maybe that'll happen in 10 years, maybe not. But for now, for my initial discussion today, we have a plan, we have a set of conditions that we are willing to put forth. We have a mechanism to try and deal with what's available, the 4,800 and whatever square feet. As to what'll be in 10 years, I mean, sure, we can change it in 10 years. That'll be done in 10 years.
I could not disagree more with you, with all due respect.
No
And the
problem.
easiest way to deal with the issue that we are faced today is just let the process take its course and let the people deal with the violations. Basically, remove the patios, go back to square one. That's the easiest way to deal with it.
When you said amnesty, by the way, when you mentioned about you feel like, people did things, this village, this state, there are amnesties, I might add, all over the place for violations. This has been done in Rybrook, it is done in villages all over. Amnesties are granted for errors, especially what really amount to, I might add, innocent mistakes that people made. Not everyone who buys a house spends their days studying the Declaration with a fine-tooth comb and drilling their lawyers on what does it say, and then, didn't know, added 27 square feet to a patio.
With all due respect, that's what the lawyers are for. At the closing, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I do agree with you. I agree with you. This would have been a lay person would never have seen this, right? It wouldn't have gone to the site plan, and I get it, understood. But you're making the argument to legalize. What it sounds like to me. You're making the argument to legalize what is there now.
Well, hold on. We are giving the HOA an opportunity of coming up with a plan to allocate the impermeable, the buffer equitably among its members, which may mean that some people may have to reduce the patios that they've already built. I don't know. But what I do know is that the people who are members of the HOA are in the best position of making those nuanced distinctions based on the different type of units that exist and the space availability. There are factors that could be considered by the HOA that certainly the planning board doesn't have the competence.
See, that's where I disagree with you a little bit, Chairman, and the reason being is why we're here, right? There would have been a plan in place at the beginning, right? And that's why the developer took the easy way out. I think the reason why this is not a novel issue and it's going on in the arbors is because this is very difficult, right? If you give a community a certain amount of impervious surface, how do you say to one house you can have X and then how the neighbor you can have Y? Like, it's a very, very difficult planning decision. And so that was probably what was faced by the DOT and by the developer, and the developer took the easy way out and didn't come up with a plan. But so I sort of disagree with you that it's not. I understand the whole point of the HOA is in the best position to evaluate their own homeowners. Agreed. But I think in our position, we are faced with the reality that we're going to be dealing with this because there's not that much surface left, and the homeowners are going to be coming to us, and we're going to have to deny them unless they go through.
How would they
But
come
that's-
to you?
but
They have
that's
no, I don't understand how could they possibly come to you for a
Okay,
site
I'll
plan
tell you
amendment?
how. I'll tell you how.
They don't have a
I'll
thought.
tell you how.
Yeah.
You use all your impervious surface, right? You allow the violations to stand as they currently are, right? You've only got 1,500 square feet left of impervious surface. That amongst 75 homes or whatever is left, it's not. How much is that per home? The math is, it's probably a little bit. That's not a lot, right? So you're gonna eat that up, and then the last person in line is gonna come back and ask for additional impervious surface, and they're going to get approved by the HOA, and they're going to be told no by the village.
Well,
No.
Of
course.
No.
That's not the way it's gonna work.
Absolutely not.
So
Absolutely
how is
not.
Steve gonna approve?
Absolutely.
No. What happens is, because I live in the PUD that where any change that I make has to be approved both by the HOA and by the village.
Right.
So I had to go to my architectural review board to get my fence approved, and then I had to go to the architectural review board of the village to get approved by them. So unless the HOA approves an application,
Mr. Chairman.
it's not going to come to us.
Mr. Chairman, we're not arguing that point. My neighbor, I live in Kingsfield, and my neighbor has a 600 square foot patio.
All right?
I don't have any, but I decided I like to have a patio. So I go to the HOA and I said, I need your concurrence for me to go to the village board to build a patio. And HOA says, well, I'm sorry, we have no more available square footage. The bank of the square footage is all exhausted.
Right.
That is what I am concerned with.
That's the crux of the problem.
Okay.
And then it's going to become our problem
Right.
How?
eventually
Right.
because
How? How does it become our problem?
if
Well, if I was a neighbor, I sue the village.
Correct.
Because
And
you
that's
were,
what
you were
I'm worried
acting,
about.
you were
I
biased
wasn't gonna
against
use the S
okay?
word,
To
but
what
that's
I
what I was.
raised
That's
2
what
months
I'm.
ago
That's what I'm
was the
worried about.
litigation problem at the
Exactly.
crux of it.
Hold on.
To the village.
Well, you already had
And
your
to the
lawyers.
HOA.
No, listen, we've been through all this.
Yeah, right.
And we had
Right.
input from council
But
concerning
this
this.
is, but this
I
is
do
our,
not
my
see this
concern
as
hasn't
being a
changed.
risk.
My concern is the intent of this application is clear that it's based upon the infractions that are currently out there, right? We all agree. Steve Fuse went out there, the notices of violation were issued, and now they're before us asking for more impervious surface.
I agree, I like the concept of the plan coming from
Yeah.
the HOA, but as long as that plan has something in it that it's an equitable plan, that everybody within the community would be dealt on same equal basis,
Right.
okay?
Okay.
Well, that's our
Now,
goal. That's
I think
what
that's
we.
fair.
that's what
Let
we
me
do.
clarify
That's-
something
that's
code-wise,
exactly
and
what we
Michael is here, so, Mr. Alter, you said, there are decks. Some homes do have decks, or they don't.
No, there are decks. When
Okay.
the homes were built, they have decks.
Okay.
Some of them.
So, right. Do we understand that any patio below the deck does not go against impervious surface?
So for interpretation purposes, when you have a elevated deck
Yes,
and you have a area under that deck,
right.
that area underneath is I don't know, has been stabilized with gravel, which is considered impervious under our code. If the upper portion is 400
Square feet.
square feet and the bottom is 400, it's only 400. I don't multiply it when I do it because A over A is still A.
Okay.
So it
So
stays
that,
the same.
that 400 that's below the deck, it would not go against this bank of the 4,800 square feet, or whatever
No.
it is.
However, when you go outside of that
That go,
footprint,
of course, I understand that.
that's what some
that
people
footprint.
did. That now goes against your number.
So the area below the deck is not considered, that's already, you don't penalize, if you have a deck.
double dip.
Thank you, that's all I wanted to know.
I don't double dip.
I thought that was my understanding, but I wanted you to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think everyone, you also included in this, I mean, want a fair and equitable plan that the HOA can look for. I don't think anyone is looking to, give certain people advantages over other people. I think that's sort of a recipe for disaster. Anyway, I think it's going to be a challenge to do it because that's the reason why the developer avoided the issue. But unfortunately, we're sort of staring in the face of this. So, look, I think you guys have an opportunity of coming up with something. We're, obviously interested in making sure that the plan works and that there are mechanisms that will, allow homeowners to, get relief depending on what they want. And, I would say go back to your people and work out something.
I think the day this board legalizes the facilities that were done, I hate use the word illegal, unknowingly that they were illegal, you are going to be flooded with the request to install additional decks, additional walkways.
100%.
You're going to be
100%.
flooded. I can guarantee you 90% of the remaining homes would be coming to you, I want a deck.
I would wonder, that's highly, that's, Mr. Guzan, a bit speculative. We don't really know, but I think both the engineer can speak to this and Mr. Alter as well as the village engineer. My impression is there's not a whole lot of room to put extra decks. The walkways, the builder kind of puts the walkways as big as is feasible with the overriding concern, to address your term, cynicism, to sell them. These things are there. This is not, 20-acre zoning here. These houses are beautiful, but there is a certain premium on space here. This is not an enormous, this is not 20-acre zoning we're dealing with. There's not a whole lot of room to expand your driveway. Where are you going to put it? I mean,
I'm
where
worried
you-
about the decks.
Okay, well, the decks, I think we have, in fact, Mr. Mendelson, a real living laboratory with the decks. We now have a community that's 5 years old, and perhaps the village engineer could address it, Mr. Alter or Mr. Fuse. How many people out of 110 have ever asked to expand their deck?
I mean, there's a direct prohibition against it on your site plan.
Okay,
Well, no,
that's.
but let's assume, I don't think.
And
people
we're lifting that.
necessarily-
We're
No,
lifting
well,
by
again, you can lift.
yeah, it's impervious.
You-
So like the minute Mike, that's what I'm concerned about is that it's just going to open the floodgates,
Okay, so.
and you're going to.
But I think look, I think any plan, it's sort of like what they say in law, and if the settlement is a good settlement, everyone is unhappy about it,
Right,
okay?
right.
And I think if the plan is actually fair and equitable, there are going to be certain homeowners that are going to be unhappy about it because because people that expanded their decks probably beyond a certain standard are going to be told you can't do that. You're going to have to scale back. And I think what people are going to see is that there are going to be people that are going to benefit and other people that are not going to benefit. But I think that if there's a sense that there is going to be a certain amount of equality with this, that the people that did this, in an unauthorized way are not just getting away with getting whatever they want. I think it is not going to open up the floodgates to anything. And it sounds to me like there's not a history of a huge number of people wanting to modify their homes anyway, because there's not an awful lot of space to modify them. So it could be a self-corrective issue.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you kind of just re-emphasized my initial concern that I expressed 20 minutes ago, that I don't want to be part with somebody that did something that was contrary to the regulations, I don't want to even call it a law, gets rewarded, and somebody that's following the regulation or it was made aware of the regulation is becoming penalized. I have a problem with that.
Well, I think
And
there's.
hopefully their plan would
That's-
alleviate my concern.
that's
And the concern and
yeah.
what I
Exactly.
would expect,
I
and this
agree.
is a very, very reputable,
I know,
conscientious
okay. No more.
board, is to fairly evaluate each application, that if someone had this done 5 years ago, they should not, necessarily be favored over someone who comes along, the week after your board votes. And that would, to me, would be one consideration of fairness. If we're not
Well,
going to have a
There are going to be a lot of considerations about this, but we're going to leave it to you to assess those considerations and what's important and what isn't important, and presumably you'll have, input from the HOA members who have a stake in this, and the community is going to have a say in what they think is appropriate or not. And by the time it comes to us, it'll be vetted by you and vetted by the people that you consult with, and we'll work it out. I assume you're going to do the best you can to try to alleviate the concerns that we have.
I think
about
one
the-
way that you could alleviate my concern is that if your plans says something that if there is more need for the impervious surface than what's left in the bank, the HOA would work with the village. If that means revisiting the stormwater management plan to make sure that everybody that wants to expand within the limit, I'm not saying, if somebody requests and they want a tennis court in the back of their.
Wait, so you already said within the limit.
Within-
What's the limit? How do you defining limit?
Well, there are code provisions, the setbacks, the,
The code.
It's a PUD. so it's a
PUD,
little
okay.
bit-
Well, think about it, okay? Think about it. But you have to, that plan has to have something there that the HOA would be willing to work with the village to make sure that those people that follow the regulations are accommodated.
Yeah, well, we would certainly, down the road, you can't bind the future boards, but the future boards, yes, would certainly consider whether it would be in the interests of the community as a whole, I stress as a whole, to come before the village, retain an engineer, and see about amending the site plan with the understanding that there's going to be stormwater implications.
Maybe you would require a little additional pond on the site, or maybe a little berm on the existing
I
pond, where you can handle so many more cubic
I
feet
don't
of
know.
water or something.
I mean, I don't know. To give someone a 25-foot deck, are we gonna spend $1 million on stormwater?
But that's the problem.
Ah,
But
now
but
you
that's the
answered my
problem.
question. You
That
answered
is
my
the problem.
question.
Money.
You answered my
That is the
question.
problem.
Right,
And
so
that's,
I said we
that's
can
why I have a
consider
problem
it,
with
exactly.
this. Is that
Of
exactly
course,
yeah?
of course.
That
I
is because the
wasn't,
person who's going to realize that
Okay.
they can expand their deck, especially with no setbacks, as Mr. Noack just put. I mean, you're going to have that application. Like that's going to happen,
We'll see, we'll see.
But then,
right? Like, isn't that?
Maybe we
I
will,
would-
maybe we won't.
Right,
That's
but
what we're doing here right now,
we have
right?
to-
That's an unknown. It's clearly a possibility and maybe a
And
maybe a
then- and if the
probability,
board,
but it's unknown
and if the
right now.
community came to a determination that they would like to have lots more decks or lots more expanded patios, really, we should be accurate, and I apologize, it's patios. If the community would like to have lots more patio space, then the board at that time would consider engaging an engineer and working with the village to formulate a new stormwater plan, and that's the option.
So you're gonna have pissed off homeowners
Right.
that are now being blocked by an HOA board. Maybe you need a mechanism. What does that look like
Well,
at
when
that
you
point?
say pissed off, there's always people who you have to say no to. I mean, unfortunately,
But you guys are going to say no because there's no impervious surface left, and you're
no,
going to
no.
blame us.
no one's
Well,
blaming,
well,
that's
hold
not
on.
blaming you.
Hold
No,
on,
no.
I don't,
That's what I'm concerned
I
about.
am not concerned.
Yeah, you're
I
there
am
to
not
take
concerned
dogs. I
about
sit in
this
your
board
shoes.
being exposed to lawsuits from homeowners. There's no viable lawsuit from a homeowner that's been refused by an HOA.
Disagree with that
Because of that.
wholly.
Look,
disagree
anyone
with
can
that
sue
wholly.
for anything, but I'm talking about any sort of conceivably viable claim.
But it's
I
not even
disagree
illegal.
with
It's not even a legal issue. With me, to some degrees, even I'm not claiming to be a moral person, but it's a moral issue too. One person gets rewarded, the other person doesn't.
No, but that's,
And we as a board should
But
not
I-
put ourselves in that situation.
Look, but I think we've been around this
Yes.
many times.
Let's wait for the plan.
Let's wait for the plan.
Yes, and then
I
we will
think-
discuss
I,
that.
I think the gentlemen here are very conscientious in trying to come up with something that, will meet, I think, our concerns, and let's give them a chance.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
So let's,
One final question, if I may. So what is incontestable and cannot be violated, I'm sure, is the idea that there is a limit on impervious surface tied to stormwater
Right.
retention.
Yes,
Right.
11,000.
So that's.
well,
that's-
4,800.
It was,
4,800.
but it was 11,000, and we know how we got to 48.
it's down-
Okay, but the number was 11,000.
It's down
Okay.
to 1,500.
And now you're
but-
1,500 left.
Oh, they even
Yeah, well, that
It's only
you had
1,500
4,800 to
usable.
begin
No,
with.
no, that's
Now
it.
you're down to 1,500.
No, it's still 48 legal. 1,500 is you rewarding those illegal installations.
Of the 11,
okay.
4,800 is
Right,
left.
right. Anyway, continue, Mr.
So whatever
Alden.
that number is, we know as a community, we cannot exceed that. And I think what we're asking for is the ability to instead have that for one central community area, which is not practical. We don't have the space or the ability to even put that into effect. I don't even know what that could be. So what we're asking for is to break that up around the community, which, again, I'm not the expert, but I think that's even better than having one spot. If you have a whole bunch of smaller spots, it's better for groundwater. But setting that aside, for the plan, as an HOA, obviously, we cannot exceed that limit. But then the use of that limit, can the HOA have the authority and the responsibility with reporting to determine and allocate that space to the individual homeowners? And also, we would also have the ultimate plan that if we have a huge demand to go above that limit, then obviously we come to the village with some
I don't know
stormwater.
if that's possible,
What's possible?
because you are basically asking that the HOA would have the final approval on the remaining improvements on the site within that 1,500 square feet,
Well-
which is about 20 feet per household. that's 70 homes left or something like that.
Well, our approval is,
Well, they have it,
And that's also a snapshot of right now.
but our approval then only allows the homeowner to then come to the village and get all their
Exactly,
required.
exactly.
the HOA is not, according to itself, final authority on anything.
Yeah.
But HOAs have the authority to be the first rank of regulatory oversight of their members, and then certain things do have to go to the village to
But
be
I
approved.
would like to see in the plan is the inevitability, and I think so, but you don't think so, you disagree. But what is going to be the contingency plan when there is no impervious surface and that next applicant comes?
What is going to be what? I'm sorry.
What's going to be
Contingency,
the contingency plan?
contingency plan, exactly.
When the person comes that doesn't have any impervious surface left.
And as I said earlier, I'm completely
know.
sensitive to that. But the other hand is, we're dealing with, we have the current reality of, we've got a bunch of people that have these patios, and we have no demand for the additional space today. So what can we do to balance the known current need of these people with the potential future requests that today we haven't had?
Why would anybody come now when those that did come forward, they have the notices of violations?
Well, certainly, well, I would say, Mr. Grzan, certainly the board this is a homeowners association. Mr. Alter and the people on the board are in daily contact with their neighbors. And I think something to consider, not exactly dispositive, but something to consider would be, you could ask Mr. Alter, how many people have come to him and said, gee, if this thing goes through, I'm hustling over to expand my patio.
When
Excuse
I
me,
was
my
reading
patio.
when I was reading through these resolutions today, this morning, I was actually thinking, my God, those guys on the board of trustees were very clever by putting that one condition there that this will not apply to the individual homeowners.
I think maybe they thought at the time it would be.
I think they were clever because they knew
didn't
that.
want to deal with this.
No. I think what they were thinking, and I would like to hear, perhaps the village engineer would know. I think the idea was that there was some sort of concept that, gee, maybe they could have additional parking spaces, that something broader than, a 2x4 patio.
We don't know. 'cause
We don't
it's
know.
not
That's
open.
despite all this research, we don't know. They
I don't
left
think
the
so. I don't
space
think
there.
we
There
know.
must have been, I think the builder thought, well, I mean, it's just my speculation. Oh, we'll give them some extra parking. We'll expand the size of the clubhouse. The clubhouse is impervious. Maybe we'll stick, a pickleball court or
I
something
think
there.
the first thing that came in was the playground, was it not?
Was the what?
Playground. And that's where bulk of those 11,000 square feet went to the playground.
Playground's grass.
I don't know.
Well,
No, there was.
there was something there.
on that complex.
Yeah, there was something going
No,
on.
but there wasn't that might have been the office park did that.
One of those things,
It
yeah.
was the office
It was
park.
I think
Yeah,
it
it
was
had nothing
the,
to do with us.
Which one?
the office part.
Okay, all right, yes,
It was Rexy.
yes.
Look, in any case, I think we sort of are where we are. And we'll work with you. I think, you understand the concerns of the board, and we understand, the pressures on you. So let's work together. I agree with you, David, work with council, work with, Michael, whoever, to, to give you some insight. And there have been precedents that may be helpful in framing an allocation plan. And, we'll revisit this next month and hash it out.
What's the worst case scenario? What happens if the board was not, if the board, for whatever reason, does not act on this? What happens?
Well, then.
The violations have to be corrected, right?
Well, the enforcement would continue.
Yeah.
Enforcement goes through.
That's limited to monetary fines. Justice Court has no equitable authority to compel somebody to remove something from their property once it's built, frankly.
The bill,
I
well,
understand that, but
the
But
building
how do you
department
correct
does.
the violation? Can somebody force the homeowner to remove the patio on their property?
the village can, but it would not be in the local justice court.
That
Be in
goes to a
another
county
jurisdiction.
court, a
Goes
state
to the
court,
Supreme
county
Court.
Supreme
Yes.
Court.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
so
Right.
it
Yeah.
would be kind of difficult to enforce.
Not necessarily. You know, if the village is looking to do that, I don't. You know, they have less of
I
a.
don't think it's anybody's interest to do it.
I don't
but,
think so either. That's why I
No.
think we should
No.
see what they come
But,
back
but,
with.
but I think,
I think we're going around in circles,
Yeah, yeah.
frankly, and my opinion is, I want to see a plan, and I will be more than happy to work within the circumspect of that plan and see what we come up with. I think we're just rehashing and rehashing and rehashing.
Maybe we'll even, I think
Going
maybe
back
I'll
to-
meet with
going-
Mr. Zid and Ms. Gray. Maybe we'll even have a face-to-face discussion. That may be helpful too, instead of just sending a letter back and forth. Letters, I think instead of letters back, I got to think about it. I'll address
I mean,
that.
look, we
Either that or
have,
we have a group meeting
Yeah,
and have a
group.
board member or two involved.
Yeah, I don't know if
even.
they're allowed to do that. The planning
One
board.
person.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want
Look,
you
we
can't
can
have
have,
private
I'm
meetings.
gonna let, I'm gonna let, you know, council and, you know, our experts sort of guide us on what needs to be done, but if you need, you know, input, you know, from us, you know, we're happy to participate. You know, our objective is we wanna do the right thing by everybody, to the extent that that's at all possible. And so, you know,
All right, I'll speak
whatever
with
you need,
everyone.
whatever you need from
Okay.
us, we'll help
Thank you.
out. All right,
So I guess any motions with the public hearing, or it just?
we'll continue it.
Adjourned?
We'll just leave it open until,
Very good. Thank
whenever.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hold on, Dave.
Yes, sir.
So I just have a matter of course question for August, because I know sometimes there's issues with scheduling, holidays, things like that. At the moment, I don't have any applications in front of me.
I'm going to be
Pending.
here in August. I have to be at the meeting because I'm running out of, dates.
So I just want to
I'm
get
around
a
in
feeling
August.
if we're going to hold a meeting in August,
Well,
that's all,
there's no
because I
application.
just don't want to surprise the
We have
applicant
anything
either.
to discuss, I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll leave it open for you guys.
What are we doing? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the second Thursday in August? Second Thursday.
Second
Right.
Thursday of August.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'm here, might as well have a meeting.
No, I just want to ask now, because I don't want to be in a situation where
Right.
we said, okay, August, and I'll call
Yeah.
saying, hey, guess
No,
what?
no, it's fine.
That's all.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna be here, you know, why not?
We are still on the record, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot emphasize my feeling that, I do not want to reward something
But
that
we
was.
shouldn't be talking about the application.
Oh, no, okay. Then,
All right,
but that's outside the application, that's in general.
okay,
I
all right. Well, why don't we adjourn? And
Yeah.
then you can have individual discussions.
Do we have to move?
Motion second to close the meeting?
Wait a minute, I still need to.
No, wait, do we-
I
Can
can't go home
you
before
make a
9
motion
o'clock.
to keep the public hearing open?
It's supposed to be, I thought I
Well,
was
then
charged with
he's
getting
ready
it
to
out
adjourn the
early.
meeting.
By 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Don't we
Okay.
first have to have a motion to close to keep the,
We carried over
right,
the PUD site plan amendment to
Right.
August.
right.
We have no further discussion items on the agenda.
Right,
So if we have nothing else to discuss, we could make a motion second to close this meeting
Okay.
for the night.
okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
No.
Thank you.
so we can go home.
We can go.